So you have a Lexus and you have that battery light on. What does that mean? Take it over to Advanced Auto or AutoZone, have them put a tester on it, see if it's your battery or your alternator. Most likely, it's your alternator. So if it's your alternator, the alternator is right here. We have to get our Serpentine Belt off. We're gonna take the air box off, pull the fan and this overflow out, and pop her on out of there and get our new alternator in there. See, I take really good care of this, as you can tell, the leaves up here. Another thing you need to know is that this alternator on here, you're gonna get a core charge when you bring this in, unless you're ordering it from Amazon or something like that. So I'm getting mine from Advanced Auto because I've got to drive this thing. And they actually have 2 in stock. So I'm gonna yank this out, figure out which one it is, and then bring it in, size it up, get my core, 2 birds, 1 stone. Luckily I have a GTO to drive and a Tacoma, but I mean, this one's more fun. First things first, remove the negative terminal of the battery. Then use your best 99-cent screwdriver to take these off. These will probably break because they're old and crappy. You literally just give that a little push in, like that, a little love tap, and these will get lost down there. We got this cover off here. Looks like there's a couple 10 mils here on this air intake. We're gonna take that off next. Once those 3 measly bolts are out, there is some electrical tape right here. I don't advise cutting that. It just pops right out of there. There is another one down here. All right, so that comes on out of there. All right, and that just friction fits in there. So you have to be careful on some of these different parts and pieces here. There's a harness that we're gonna take out here. There is actually, we're gonna remove this radiator overflow hose here, but just be real careful, because if you break off any of this plastic, this will have to come off one of these days. I think it, does it just, wow, guess that's how that works. Got our 10 mil out of there, 10 mil out of here. We're gonna take and pop that out. Obviously it's not that easy. There is another plug right here we popped out. Way down in here underneath your fan, there's a 10 millimeter bolt here. And there's one down there, so this all pops out. Okay, so on your fan shroud, start with the bottom 2, pull those out from underneath. That'll be the easiest. Then do the top 2. When you go to put this back in, hang your top 2, and then do the bottom 2. It's ready to lift out. I just have to yank her out of there. What happened was, this coolant overflow line right here is old and brittle and cracked right there, and it cracked. So this broke off in the process. They make a new one of these, $28. There should be a little snap ring here, pop this out. I would replace this regardless, because I literally just barely bumped that and it just binked right off. So you don't want to go down the road and lose your radiator coolant. So we've got plenty of room to get to our alternator right here. I unbuckle this little guy here. Start by taking off this lead, this power lead. So right here in front of the ABS system, there's a bolt, and you can take that out, and that will give you a lot of play that you're gonna need to be able to get down in here, so you can move that over and get your tools in here and work on all the pulleys down there. So you definitely want to take that out if it's not readily apparent to you. It looks a little difficult from my camera angle if you're seeing this, like, oh, I don't know if I want to attempt this, but honestly, this much of the job has been pretty easy. When we get down into the guts, it's going to be a little bit harder. We are going to have to take this wheel off, jack it up in the air a little bit, get onto this side so we get to the tension pulley way down in there. You got to get or leave tension off, pop that belt off. If you haven't already replaced the lug nuts on one of these cars, go ahead and go down to Advanced Auto and get yourself a set, because the stock lug nuts on these suck. So we got a 10 millimeter right here that we're going to take off on the alternator. Then we're going to take this bracket off for this harness. There's another 10 mil right there. One suggestion is, if you don't have one of these, get a Serpentine Belt tool. They're $36 at the store, probably cheaper if you got it online. So what you'll do down in here, it's a little bit hard to see, is that you're going to find the tensioner pulley, which is way down in there. And you're going to put your 14 millimeter on here, and you're going to push it forward. It's going to be the most obvious one. And when you do that, you'll see it's spring loaded and it'll move back and forth. Push this forward with one hand and reach your other hand in there and pull the belt off of the pulley. And then that releases tension off. If you're not sure, just look up how to take off a Serpentine Belt video. So I actually took the Serpentine Belt pulley bar. It's on the Serpentine Belt. And I actually have it zip tied over here to the motor mount, because with that out of the way, cocked off to the side, it was easier to take off the Serpentine Belt from under here with the 14 millimeter. This is the Serpentine Belt here, and then this is what I have rigged up there. But that's the bolt you want to get to on the alternator. So you cannot see that with this forward towards the front of the vehicle. You can't see it. Anyway, so now it's exposed. We can take that out and try to go from there. So you're going to want to also move your oil dipstick out of the way, and then way back under here, there's a 12mm bolt that's kind of on like a gold bracket, and now the alternator is loose. I'm going to be completely honest, this thing was a pain in the dingle balls to get out of there. This bracket here needs to come off and go on the new alternator. We put this big rubber pad between the radiator and it, because you really have to squeeze it between this line here, and you don't want to bash your radiator and create a whole new set of problems for yourself. So it was not enjoyable getting it out of there. I also pulled off the idler pulley up above. It's easier to get to it with out of the way. It needs to be replaced. So we're installing the 130 amp alternator. There's a 100 amp choice and a 130 amp choice. Always go for the higher amperage if you can afford it. I believe there's a $60 core charge on the lower amp and $12 core on the higher amp, so it really kind of balances out. But yeah, anyways, we're going 130 amp. So I'm going to put this in the car first, then I'm going to install our bracket. I just marked it on here so that way I don't, you know, accidentally. Seems like there's only one way to put this in, but you can never be so safe. So I'm going to stick this in there, put that in once it's in there. That was a whole lot easier going in than out because I had the bracket off, so we're going to mount the bracket on and get this buttoned up. So you can see my two black lines here. These paid dividends because this was actually cocked, you know, a quarter turn that way. So, and I started tightening it down and I noticed my lines were off, so was able to lift it up, move it, and tighten it in a place where it needs to be. Because this is really tight quarters down here. It's fighting you the whole time, so that's nice to kind of have some proactive measures to make sure that goes in right. I marked it on all three sides, which works because I can't see the other two. Right now, all I'm doing is going through and putting all the pieces on back on the alternator, getting everything buttoned up, any of the wires that I took off in here, getting everything ready, double checking, triple checking, make sure, well, not really triple checking, but just making sure I have everything all tied up the way that it's supposed to be. So on here, there's a ring. We're literally gonna get a pick on here, and you can see right now, pull that off, lickety split, and then you want to very carefully, so you don't break your radiator, just wiggle this back and forth without breaking it. And I'm going to kind of put a little pressure back here and try to get this off. The pry bar underneath, and then I grab the top part with my hands like this. So I had the pry bar down here with one hand and just gently applied pressure and kind of wiggled it back and forth and got it off. I've seen one guy on the internet use PB Blaster. That might be smart, but this came off. Just be gentle with it. You don't want to put a new radiator in here. While we're in there, we're going to throw in a new Serpentine Belt and a new idler pulley. There are two of these, but I recently replaced the lower one. This is our upper one. And then, like I said, wait till you put the fans in before you do this very last, so you don't break this. So I'll show you a little trick here. So I've got my wrench on here on the tensioner, and if you look right here, this is an Allen wrench. So when I take the tensioner, that right now is loose, and I can get my belt on there because I've got the tensioner wide open and it's propped open with this. So what I'll do now is I'll put my wrench on here, tighten this up, and that will relieve tension off of my Allen wrench there. And then this will be nice and tight. So that gives you enough time to really look at a diagram, make sure all this stuff is fitting on here correctly. See that? So you can see right there where that hole lines up. And let go, and we're all set. And there you have it, no more battery light.